The sun rose lazily over Umu's, casting a golden glow across the tops of the palm trees that stood like quiet sentinels around the village. The scent of roasting yam mixed with the earthy smell of dew-soaked soil. Children ran through the paths between huts, dragging sticks along the dry ground. The drums of the coming New Yam festival could already be heard faintly in the distance. In the middle of it all, Amaka sat on a wooden stool beside her mother's abandoned mortar, quietly peeling yam. Her hands worked with rhythm, but her mind was far away. Every girl in the village whispered about what would happen that evening. Everyone knew. Tonight, her father would announce who she would marry. And everyone assumed it would be Obinna, the quiet, steady older son of the late palm wine tapper, Ponwok. But Chisholm had returned. The younger brother, the one with city shoes and a silver wristwatch that shone too brightly. He had come back from ABA with a swagger in his step and stories that smelled too sweet to be true. And somehow, Amaka's father was listening. That evening, as the villagers gathered under the ube tree near the central square, the tension hung in the air like wet cloth. Old men sat with chewing sticks between their teeth. Women arranged their wrappers tighter around their waist. And the young girls whispered behind their fans. Then came the voice everyone waited for. Ifani, the village tapper and Amaka's father, stood with his carved staff, his voice strong but calm. "My daughter is not a child," he began. "She is a river born from her mother's fire. And fire must be fed with strength. So I will not choose for her. The gods will." Murmurs rose. He raised his hand. "There is one challenge. One task. The man who brings me a full calabash of palm wine from the forbidden grove before the new yam moon will earn the right to seek her hand." Gasps scattered like birds. Even the drummers paused. The forbidden grove. That place hadn't been touched since before the war. No tapper had set foot there in 2 generations. They said it was haunted, that the trees whispered secrets to each other, and anyone who dared climb them came down different, if they came down at all. But Chisholm stepped forward. With a smile too confident. "I will bring you your wine," he said, removing his wristwatch and handing it to Amaka's father. "This is just the beginning." Obinna stood in silence. His fist clenched at his side. His eyes found Amaka's. She didn't look away. But she didn't smile, either. That night, the moon rose in silence. And Amaka sat again by the mortar, grinding pepper, as her thoughts circled like hawks above the grove she had never seen, and the choice no one had asked her to make. Obinna wiped the sweat off his brow as he stepped over a fallen log, deeper into the palm forest. The air was thick and slow, like soup. Leaves above rattled, though there was no wind. He wasn't supposed to be here. No one was. This was the forbidden grove, the place where even birds refused to sing. He had left at dawn, before the cock crow. No one saw him leave. Not even his brother. Especially not his brother. This wasn't about winning Amaka. This was about truth. About making things right. Further behind him, a branch snapped. Obinna froze. He wasn't alone. He ducked low, crouched between 2 thick roots, and listened. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. He held his breath. Then, a voice. "Obinna." He stood up fast, heart pounding. "Chisholm." His brother stepped through the brush, a smack across his lips, carrying a carved tapping knife slung over his shoulder. "Going somewhere?" Obinna's eyes narrowed. "You followed me." "I didn't need to." "You're predictable," Chisholm said, stepping closer. "Always trying to be the good son. The humble one. The hero. Stay out of my way." Chisholm laughed. "You're tapping trees now. The same boy who used to cry climbing the yam barn." Obinna didn't answer. He turned and kept walking. Then, thud! A stone flew past his ear, slamming into a tree. He turned fast. Are you mad? You think this is just a competition? Chisholm growled. You think you can show up in this bush, grab a branch, and walk home with her? Obinna didn't respond. So Chisholm pulled out his knife and pointed it. Then prove you deserve her. Obinna didn't flinch. But his hand clenched into a fist. I'm not fighting you. You don't have to win, Chisholm said. You just have to survive. He lunged. Obinna dodged, grabbing a fallen branch, deflecting the blade with a crack of wood and metal. They wrestled between the roots, crashing into the wet earth. Obinna pushed Chisholm off, panting. Enough, he yelled. This grove is not for war. But Chisholm didn't stop. He rushed again, this time with more rage than aim. Obinna stepped aside. Crack! Chisholm's leg caught a root. He fell, hard. The knife flew from his hand. Silence! Obinna stood over him. He could have kicked the blade away. Could have punched him. Could have walked away. Instead, he reached down. Chisholm slapped his hand away. But Obinna stayed there. Waiting. Chisholm stared at him. And for the first time, looked tired. Behind them, the palm trees creaked. Wind began to swirl. Then, a voice. Not from either of them. Soft. Faint. Only the word he may take from me. Both brothers stand. At the base of the oldest palm tree, a single full calabash sat. Untouched. Still. As if it had been waiting. Obinna stepped forward, slowly. But didn't reach for it. He turned to his brother. It was never about who gets to marry her, he said. It's about who she wants. And who she respects. Chisholm looked at him for a long time. Then nodded. And stepped back. Together, they carried the calabash out of the grove. But only one of them held it. And neither of them knew. Amaka had entered the grove hours before them. The grove was not as silent as they thought. It whispered, but not in fear. In memory. Amaka had entered the forbidden grove long before the brothers. While the village slept. While the men planned. While her father polished the staff he would raise before the elders. She didn't wait for permission. She climbed. The back of the sacred palm tree caught her hands as she pulled herself up, barefoot, breath steady. Her wrapper was tied firm, her scarf tucked in. The forest below was still. The red sun hadn't yet cracked the horizon. Halfway up, the wind changed. Leaves rustled like distant applause. Then, she saw it. A full calabash. Already waiting. Balanced in a hollow near the top of the tallest tree. It wasn't magic. It was memory. Her mother had once told her, the grove remembers who listens. So Amaka sat beside the calabash, cross-legged on the thick branch, and listened. She remembered her mother tapping palm trees before sunrise. She remembered learning to climb before she could spell her name. She remembered Obinna's kindness when they were children, and Chisholm's laughter before the city changed him. She thought of both brothers. What they were fighting for. What they were ignoring. Below, she heard the sound of rustling leaves. Male voices. Footsteps. She smiled softly. They were late. She didn't go down. She didn't speak. She left the calabash exactly where it was, perfectly placed. Untouched. Let them find it. Let them wander. Let the grove choose. She climbed down, slow and silent. The earth greeted her feet without a sound. As she stepped out of the grove, the sun broke over Yumius. She tied her wrapper, wiped the blood from her palms, and walked home through the back path, before the cocks had even crowed. That night, while the village prepared for the second night of the New Yam festival, Amaka sat in her mother's old seat beside the fire, weaving a small circle from palm leaves. She was not waiting to be chosen. She was watching to see if either of them truly saw her. By the time the second night of the New Yam festival arrived, the village square of Umeus was alive. Drums pulsed through the evening air, pounding like heartbeats. Torches lit the walkways with flickers of gold. Smoke rose from roasted yam and spicy bushmeat. Children darted between dancers. Laughter roared like thunder. At the center of it all, Ifeanyi, Amaka's father, stood tall beneath the ube tree, the sacred staff in his hand. Beside him was the calabash, full, sealed with wax, resting on a carved stool. And next to that, Obinna. Clothes dusty, but his face calm. Chisholm. Chin high, eyes burning. Both had returned from the grove with the calabash in hand. But only one had carried it. And neither knew the truth, it had been placed there by her. Amaka watched from the shadows, dressed in a simple red wrapper. No beads. No crown. She didn't want to be the festival's flame. She wanted to be its mirror. And that night, the mirror cracked. As Ifeanyi raised his hand to speak, a shout rang out from the yam barn. Fire! Fire, oh! Gasps. Screams. Smoke poured from the corner barn where the elders stored the ceremonial yams. Someone knocked over a drum. People scattered. The fire danced too fast to be natural. The village boys rushed with calabashes of water. Obi ran for a bucket. Chisholm froze, then turned and walked away from the barn. Only Amaka saw him. By the time the fire was out, 2 yam baskets had burned. A section of the roof had collapsed. The crowd gathered again, but now the drums were silent. Obinna returned covered in ash, coughing. Chisholm returned untouched. The chief stepped forward. Someone set the fire. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. Voices began to mutter. Then a boy, small, dusty, frightened, stepped forward. I saw him. The one with the silver shoes. He threw something before it burned. All eyes turned to Chisholm. Lies! He shouted. Why would I burn my own festival? Amaka stepped forward. And silence followed her. Because you didn't find the calabash, she said. You found what I left. Gasps. Chisholm's face twisted. You're lying. No, she said. I climbed the tree before both of you. I placed it there. I watched you both walk into a forest looking for something only I was worthy to find. I gave it freely, and still, you tried to cheat. Chisholm's hands shook. Obinna looked at her, wide-eyed. You climbed the grove. She nodded. I climbed it. I bled for it. And neither of you noticed. Chisholm dropped his gaze. And Obinna. He stepped back. And knelt. Not to beg. But to honor. I didn't know, he said softly. I did, Amaka replied. Ifeanyi raised the staff again. The gods have spoken through fire, he said. Let it be known, not all who carry a calabash carry truth. He turned to Amaka. And not all daughters are waiting to be chosen. That night, the yam barn smoldered behind them. But the village of Umeus was quiet, and for the first time in many seasons. The girl at the center of the storm was the only one standing still. The night after the fire, the village was quiet. Too quiet. The drums were silent. The air smelled of smoke and roasted yam. Children stayed indoors. Even the dogs didn't bark. Inside her hut, Amaka sat alone, running her fingers over the leather binding of her mother's old journal, the one hidden behind the mortar since she died. She hadn't touched it in years. But something told her now was the time. The first page was dry. The second, dusty. By the third, Amaka stopped breathing. He will lie. Not because he is evil, but because he is afraid. And the truth will burn unless someone chooses to carry it. her mother's handwriting. On the next page, a name was written. Not hers. Chisholm. And next to it, your half-brother. Amaka stood up so fast the stool fell behind her. The fire. The fight. The jealousy. It all made sense now. She left her hut without speaking to her father. She found Obinna near the old shrine, sitting with a pot of palm wine untouched. I should have known you'd find me here, he said quietly. She sat beside him. Silence passed between them like a bowl no one wanted to drink from. I read her journal, she said. My mother's. He turned slowly. She wrote about your mother. And mine. And a man. Obinna said nothing. He loved her first. Didn't he? Obinna looked down at his hands. My father. Amaka nodded. Which means Chisholm's rage was never about me. It was about the name he couldn't carry. About being born in the corner of a story. Obinna didn't answer. He didn't need to. The next morning, Chisholm was gone. He left nothing behind. Not his shoes. Not his city coat. Not even a goodbye. Only a note nailed to the base of the ube tree. Tell her I understand now. The crown was never mine to carry. But I did love her, in my way. That evening, the elders gathered once more. Amaka stepped forward in front of them all, no fear, no ceremony. My name is Amaka Nokechi, daughter of 2 stories. And I choose my path. She turned to Obinna. I don't want to be a prize. I want to be a partner. If your heart is as steady as your silence, come with me. Obinna looked up. Then stood. And nodded. The elders murmured. But none objected. Because the fire had already spoken. And the grove had already chosen. The village square of Umuse had never been this quiet. The ube tree stood tall. The elders sat in a half circle. The sacred stool waited empty. And at the center of it all, stood Amaka. She wore white, not the white of mourning, but of becoming. Her wrapper was clean, her hair tied high, her hands steady. Before her, stood 2 men. Obinna, eyes lowered, still covered in the ash of the bonfire. Chisholm, clean, silent, unreadable, but no longer smirking. Her father, a funny, raised the staff of decision, as tradition required. Daughter, he said, you have witnessed the challenge. You have seen their strength. Their risk. Their offering. The time has come, said the eldest chief. Speak the name of your husband. The whole village leaned forward. Amaka took 1 breath. Then another. And spoke. I will speak 3 names today. 1 for each truth. Gasps. Confusion. The name of pride is Chisholm. She turned to him. You came with flash. With city tongue. With anger dressed as ambition. You loved me, but only to prove you could win. Chisholm flinched. The name of honor is Obinna. She turned to him. You walked through fire. Not to win me. But to understand me. You listened to silence, and heard more than words. Obinna's eyes rose, but he said nothing. Then she stepped forward. Laid the calabash down before both men. And said. But the name of my husband is mine. Gasps turned to stunned silence. She turned to the crowd. I am not a prize in a challenge. I am not a calabash to be carried. I am a fire. And whoever walks beside me must not try to hold me, only to rise with me. Obinna knelt. Then let me rise. And this time, Amaka knelt too, beside him. Not beneath him. Beside. They stood together. The people rose in cheer. Even the elders nodded, slowly, but with respect. Chisholm turned. Silent. He did not stay for the wedding that followed a moon later. But he left behind a letter. I did not lose. I learned. And next time I love, I will bring water, not fire. And that is how the girl who was once the prize became the new law of Umuse. From that day forward, no woman would be married by competition. Only by choice. And the palm grove. It was no longer forbidden. Because a girl had climbed it first.